Once again, a very warm welcome to the first of today's Policymaker Roundtable sessions. Please do feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat on Zoom and say where you're joining from and the organisation that you work with. My name is Dominic Register. I'm a Programme Director at Salzburg Global Seminar. Salzburg Global Seminar was founded 75 years ago this year, and our core mission across all of our work is to challenge current and future leaders to shape a better world. We do this work through strategic convening. Pre-pandemic, that was primarily in person. For the last 2 years, it has been through online events and the support and development of online networks. And we very much hope that this year we will be able to move to a more blended approach, supporting both online networks and in-person convenings. Strategic convening involves bringing together diverse groups of people from different countries, very often working in different sectors at different stages of their careers, but all of whom are working on a common challenge, but approaching that common challenge from different perspectives because of where they work or the nature of their work. Salzburg Global's role in this is to create the space and conditions that let participants in our programs share what they know to be true, insights that they've developed in their contexts, and then talk openly and candidly about challenges that they face with their work, so that we can then work together to share solutions that have been developed in one country and could be relevant and applicable in another country, or in many, many cases, work together to develop and pilot new solutions to long-standing challenges. We apply this approach to issues from all manner of different sectors, including the corporate sector, health, issues around rule of law, issues around the arts and creativity, and of course, education, which is what brings all of us here together today. Our education work over the last 5 years has had a very strong focus on whole child development or holistic education, with a particular emphasis on social and emotional learning. And last year, thanks to the fantastic support from the LEGO Foundation, we were able to launch the Education Policymakers Network. The Education Policymakers Network builds on research that LEGO Foundation had previously supported with the Brookings Institute around the idea of developing a breadth of skills. And I would strongly recommend going to the breadth of skills page on the Brookings Institute website to read some of that earlier research, because it is excellent and it is still highly relevant for many of the challenges that all of our societies and education systems are grappling with today. So the Education Policymakers Network connects policymakers from 21 different countries who will want to work, learn and innovate together. And the intention is that this network will help support and sustain education reform around the need to develop a breadth of skills. So when we talk about breadth of skills, we're talking about cognitive skills, creative skills, physical skills, and social and emotional skills. And our Education Policymakers Network is primarily focused on young and school-aged learners. So all of the policymakers within the group have responsibility for some aspect of education for 3 to 12-year-olds in their countries. And that will be very much the focus of today's conversations. Now, the reason for this focus, I'm sure, will be very clear to everyone joining us online this morning, that we are living in a time of convergent crises. There is the learning crisis, which has been well documented and analysed over a number of years, where the massive inequality of education outcomes and many children completing school without functional literacy and numeracy, let alone the breadth of the other kinds of skills that we've been talking about. We are also living in a time of great social fragmentation, where we're seeing division and polarization across societies around the world manifest itself in ways that we hadn't seen in recent decades. This is also obviously a moment of absolute critical importance in addressing the climate crisis, and we need individuals, populations, societies, governments to be able to work together in ways that they haven't previously if we are to address the climate crisis. All of us are concerned with working together to develop a better post-pandemic world that can address many of these challenges. And then we are all living in economies which are being dramatically affected by changes in the nature of work, by the fourth industrial revolution. We believe, and all of the policymakers believe, and the Lego Foundation and all of our other partners believe, that reform focused on developing a breadth of skills within education systems is an absolutely necessary and legitimate means of tackling all of these crises. It's not the only thing which is needed, but it's an absolutely critical component of the response. As a response to learning and well-being needs that we've got a much better understanding of because of everyone's experiences during the pandemic, as a proactive and forward-thinking approach for developing the kinds of behaviors that can help us address the climate crisis and address structural inequalities in our different societies. And breadth of skills is a really important component of developing fairer, more compassionate societies in the future. We also believe that this network approach, bringing together policymakers from different countries who are willing to work, learn, and innovate together, will help and support and sustain this much needed reform. We've been incredibly lucky since the network launched last May, in May 2021, to work with 26 outstanding policymakers, many of whom will be speaking over the next few hours and leading the different roundtable conversations. Policymakers or public sector employees are such an important part of any education ecosystem and critical for bringing about reforms and then working alongside teachers, school leaders, researchers, civil society in sustaining and maintaining these kind of reforms. Without the role that policymakers play, these kind of reforms are just impossible to initiate. When the Education Policymakers Network first started, the participants collectively identified 5 topics that they felt were of paramount importance for this agenda. And these are going to be the focus of our roundtable discussions in the first part of this session. So the 5 topics were breadth of skills assessment, new approaches to early years education, innovations in distance learning, post-COVID education purpose and priorities, and then thinking at the 5th one, thinking about a global breadth of skills curriculum and what that might look like. And in a minute, I'm going to invite each of the roundtable hosts to speak very briefly about the conversations that they are going to be leading in the breakout sessions. So the Policymaker Network have been meeting as a collective and then also in smaller groups as learning circles to develop their own thinking and share examples and practice around these 5 topics. And the approach today is that in about 5 minutes, we will open up 5 breakout rooms. All of you choose the room that you want to go to. You'll be in that room for about an hour. The Policymakers Network will give a short framing presentation to the topic and will then pose a series of questions to everyone in the group to shape the discussion. These are going to be very, very interactive sessions. We're not presenting definitive, conclusive ideas because this is a work in process, a work in progress. And what we're very much hoping to do is benefit from the collective intelligence of everybody on the call, who all of you will have amazing insights and ideas to share for this topic, and that will help advance the wider agenda. The sessions will each be an hour long, and they will all be recorded, and then all of the recordings will be made available afterwards. So you'll only be able to choose one session to join, but then you will be able to access the recordings of the other conversations afterwards. We're also repeating this process later today from 6 o'clock Central European time. So if you would like to join a different breakout group later today, then you'd be very welcome to register and join us in about 10 hours time. So once we've done the roundtable discussions, we'll then take a very short break and then come back together. In the second half of the program today, we will have 3 in-depth case studies looking at specific aspects of education reform from 3 of the participating countries in the Education Policymakers Network. And we'll talk more about that when we reconvene after the break. So what I would now love to do is invite each of the 5 breakout room hosts to very briefly, literally just 1 or 2 minutes, introduce their topic and what they would like to be talking about. So first up, if I could invite Shailendra Sharma to unmute. Shailendra is the Principal Advisor to the Director of Education in the Government of Delhi in India, and Shailendra will be leading the roundtable on breadth of skills assessment.
Thank you, Dominic, and welcome all of you to this wonderful morning here in India and a very early morning in Austria. So thank you so much for assembling. As Dominic introduced, I would be in conversation on breadth of skills assessment sessions. We are part of. Can all of you please mute? Sanjeev, please mute yourself. So as part of this education policy network, I would be hosting the session on breadth of skills assessment today. Along with in my conversations, we will also have 3 of my colleagues who I would say they're the policy drivers of curriculum and assessment reforms in Delhi. And I'm also thankful to Grace from Kenya, who is my partner in the learning cycle on breadth of skills assessment. So we will be in conversation. We wanted to make it very interactive. So we got the people who are actually on the ground, driving some of the reforms here in Delhi, in India, benefited from the experience elsewhere to speak about breadth of skills assessment. While we'll talk in more detail in our sessions, but as a teaser, I would like to point out that the focus of our discussion would be that why, when the education system has been created to build knowledge, skills, attitude, and values among the learners, the focus is predominantly on knowledge acquisition. As a result, the entire assessment is also primarily largely driven in that direction, leaving the range of skills or values or attitude that the learner is expected to acquire untouched. So not that it doesn't happen in the school system, not that children do not acquire those, but as a system, we do not go straight away to measure that, and therefore for that do not get the primacy that it deserves. So we will be covering a full range of issues around the curriculum design as well as the assessment, which drives the pedagogy in classroom. So join our discussion after the introductory session. See you there in breadth of skills assessment roundtable. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Shailendra. Next, I'd like to invite Amara Martinus, who's the Director of Policy Research and Analysis in the Western Cape Government in South Africa. And Amara is hosting the discussion around new approaches to early years education.
Thanks, Dominic, and good morning to everybody on the call. It's really good to be here and to see so many faces, as it were. So our group has been focusing on new approaches to early years education, as Dominic has said. We'll be discussing some of the work that we've been doing since last May. So it is a pretty short time, but I think that we've been doing a lot of interesting sort of deep dives into various areas. And really what we'll be focusing on today is a deep dive both into South Africa as well as into Uganda, looking at some of the successes and challenges faced in both of our countries, some of the innovations used to potentially solve some of these issues as well. And I'll be also sharing with you something hot off the press in terms of a new project that we've been doing in the Western Cape in South Africa, focusing on how we've used behavior change to change outcomes and improve ECD outcomes. So please do join us. We are very thrilled to be here, and I do hope that you can come and contribute to our group. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Amara. The third group, chaired by Laila Abu Katusa, will be looking at innovations in distance learning. Laila is the acting head of the Education Training Division in the Ministry of Education in Jordan. So Laila, would you unmute and just share a little bit about the kind of conversation that you'll be having with your breakout group? Laila, are you with us?
It seems maybe Layla had to drop off the call very briefly due to internet. So maybe
we will move on to the fourth group, and hopefully Layla will be back with us. So the fourth of the breakout groups, co-chaired by Kolosa Nonkenge and Anne Vinlay, is looking at post-education purpose and priorities. Kolosa is a research associate in the Department for Basic Education in South Africa, and Vin is the acting Director General of the Vietnam Institute of Educational Sciences. So Kolosa and Vin, would one of you mind sharing briefly what you'd like to be talking about?
Hello. Yeah, I don't see Kolosa yet, so let me introduce about the session on the post-COVID education purpose and priorities. And as the name mentioned, we will focus on two things. First one is the educational continuities lessons and the story that we have experienced in the last 2 years, and then we will discuss about what is the lesson learned and what would be the priorities for keeping the kids come back to the school. The session will be very interactive, and we mostly for the open discussion. As a international global group like this, we hope that all of the participants can contribute their own story, their own experience, and we can draw some conclusion from the discussion. Yeah, and the session will be chaired by Kolosa and myself. We will bring in the story from South Africa and Vietnam. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you very much, Vin. And then the fifth group, chaired by Monica Lutke-Entrup, is looking at the idea of a global breadth of skills curriculum. Monica is the head of the Early Childhood Unit in Lower Saxony in Germany. So Monica, welcome, and would you tell us a bit about your conversation?
Yes, good morning to everybody around the world from Hanover in Germany. I'm looking forward to exchanging ideas with you all, and I am going to host a panel where the Learning Circle on the Global Breadth of Skills curriculum is presenting our findings and results of our stock-taking effort. We have looked at how breadth of skills approaches are embedded in the different curricula of our respective countries. And by comparing what we've got, we analyzed how from the perspectives of each country, breadth of skills could be implemented and developed. And it's also interesting to see how you can look at things from different perspectives and still follow a similar goal. And I have learned a lot from my colleagues from countries such as Lebanon, Portugal, and Scotland. And I'm very happy if you are interested in joining us, and I'm inviting you to participating in this stock-taking exercise to look how maybe the overlaps and the consensus and the common features of the different curricula could give rise to something that becomes a more international consensus on how to go about promoting not only cognitive but also social and emotional skills.
Brilliant, thank you, Monica. I wonder if there is anyone else from Layla's group who's on the call.
Yeah, I am.
Oh,
on
Layla,
the
you're
call.
back with us. Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm
Welcome
just
back.
sorry. I'm just sorry because we're having a snowstorm in Jordan, and our internet is not stable. I'm really sorry for that.
No problem at all. So, if you wouldn't mind very briefly introducing some of the things that you'd like to talk about in your breakout group around innovations in distance learning.
Yeah, sure. First of all, allow me to say welcome to everyone. It's a great pleasure to be with you. I am Layla Abu Qattousa from Jordan, the Middle East. My lovely group, we are from, of course, different country, and that has enriched our experience greatly. We are from Kenya, from Serbia, from Bhutan, and from Ukraine and Jordan. And our topic is about innovation in distance learning. So, as you know, we have chosen this topic due to the situation that happened with COVID-19 outbreak. We thought that normally education has been going in a very traditional way, but the closure of schools and the inability to maintain face-to-face education entailed that we have to think of something new, something innovative. And that's why we thought of thinking of how can we foster students' innovation and teachers' innovation in order to maintain a high quality of education. So in our roundtable discussion, we are going to have 3 different case studies, one from Jordan, one from Ukraine, and one from Kenya. We're going to talk about our experiences with regard to shifting towards online learning and distance learning, and what are our innovative initiatives from the teacher side, government side, and community side. We are expecting to answer some questions like who should, for example, foster students' innovation? Is it the ministry, the teachers, the school principals? And what areas of innovation should we target, and the definition of innovation? So what might be innovative in a country may not be in another, or in a context may not be in another. That's all from my part. I would like to thank my group for working together very beautifully. And I hope everyone would enjoy this amazing event. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Leila. So just to recap, there are 5 breakout sessions, one looking at breadth of skills assessment, one looking at new approaches to early years education, the 3rd looking at innovations in distance learning, the 4th around post-COVID education purpose and priorities, and the 5th around developing a global breadth of skills curriculum. And so, Karina, if you could open the 5 breakout rooms. Each of you should now be able to choose the room that you would like to go to. The breakout option is at the bottom of the Zoom screen. And then we will be in these breakout rooms for about an hour. The beginning of the session will involve a short presentation by the different learning circles from the Education Policymakers Network. And there'll then be an interactive discussion. And then we will reconvene back here in plenary.